in Central Asia, and mostly because the ideas of Russian Orientalism from the very beginning in different aspects up to contemporary period is of particular interest, not only for me but for our group. And tomorrow we will have a workshop in Leiden, and we will be talking about many things, and I hope Luke and Oliver will be able to join us there. So, I've written some ideas that won't be about, mainly, it will be all together, because somehow when I was watching this film, I had some reservations, and then I started to really think that maybe it is something like what is more familiar to me, and this is like a Ghazal of Hafez. And if you know about him, he's a very famous medieval Persian mystical poet. And why he's so famous, one of the aspects is that when you start reading his very, very short poems, you start unveiling. He's very interesting because he's got multi-layered meaning of every single page, every single verse. So it's something like this poem, because you've got several meanings. And the first, of course, which is on the surface, this is the story of this poor girl, Umida. As I could notice in some of the watercolors, you mentioned that Umid is the hope. It is a hope, and I don't know if that was her real name, but it really gives a more dimension to this story, because this is, I think, one of the main messages of this video, because the hope, compared, for example, with some other, because the story is very typical, where the girl comes to a big city in a completely alien, really hostile environment, and she loses her hope, she loses her previous life, what she was believing in, and what she had. She had to really cope with something different. And if we go back to something very, very familiar, like, for example, Dostoevsky's Insulted and Humiliated. Do you remember there was an English girl there called Nellie Smith? She's going through very, very similar things, but she dies. In this case, Umida goes back, and there is a real hope that she will recover after this very difficult experience. Second semantic layer, of course, is also very obvious. This is Central Asians in St. Petersburg, in Russia, in big capitals. Of course, there is a difference between the two capitals. We seem to be all coming from the same capital. And it's been historically so that St. Petersburg was founded deliberately as a capital, cosmopolitan capital of the new Russia. Right, so Moscow is a traditional one, and St. Petersburg is very cosmopolitan, but still it is very, very different. And for those who are coming from Central Asia, it is, in many cases, a very tragic experience. So I'm not even trying to tackle the idea of Russian Orientalism, but I will just remind you of this very famous quotation from Stolypin. Stolypin is the first Prime Minister of Russia. I'm sure you all know this. And his quotation referring to the Russian double identity, right? We've got the national anthem, the double-headed eagle. We've got two heads. One is looking to the west, one is looking to the east, right? So if you cut off one of the heads, the eastern part, right? I'm just rephrasing his very famous thing. So if you cut it off, you cut off the eastern part, you won't make Russia being Western. It will bleed and die, right? So it is again the same idea of being able to cope with both identities inside Russia. we've got already very, very strong Eastern component, right? So we need now to cope with this additional migration, right? Because it is something very, very recent. Because what was happening here in old Europe, now Russia is encountering nowadays. And one of the questions, if she is going to invent something new again, or if Russia is going to learn from the lessons of inevitability of mortality of multiculturalism, as it was declared quite recently. We don't know, but this is again the art which helps to interpret and understand what is happening now in Russia. Next, we've got this ideas of Russia's third Orient, right? We know that there is the first, historically speaking, the Crimea, right? Going back to Catherine the Great. Then we had the Caucasus, Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. Что такое для нас Азия? What Asia means for us, right? He was writing a lot about this, and now we're encountering Central Asia, and this is the third one. Of course, it is quite an old question for Russia, but still it is now coming back. It is now inside the both capitals. It is, for example, I was in Moscow not very long time ago, and my own experience shows that for some reason the plane landed in Domodedovo. Usually it is the airport for domestic flights, only traditionally. And just one small example. Out of 5 restaurants, 4 had very strong Oriental flavor. One was called Uzbekka, the Uzbek Maiden, one was called Oriental Bazaar, and only one had, one was very Russian, deliberately Russian, because it was a part of the chain of Yolki-Palki. So it's a very, very traditional Russian cuisine. You could see even in this airport, everyday life, the features is very obvious. The confrontation